Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session of DEMOFEST, Sales Engineer Compensation and Workload Study Review with our very own John Cook. DEMOFEST is hosted by Consensus. We help pre-sales teams to scale with intelligent demo automation. As a heads up, we are recording this session and all other sessions, and they'll be posted, the links to the recordings, in about 2 weeks in the Scaling Pre-Sales and Sales Engineering LinkedIn group. So we encourage you to join the group, and I'll paste the link to that group within the chat window in a minute or two, just so that you have that for reference. And I'll chat it again at the end of the session or near the end of the session, just as a reminder for you to grab and be able to join that group. So, born in the heart of Silicon Valley, John went to 11 different schools by the time he was finally graduated from high school in Southern England. Over 20 years later, he's still accosting strangers. He's a startup enthusiast, data geek, story buff, and father, and ying for great typography, and our presenter for today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to John.
Hey, thanks, Brian. That's a brilliant intro that I wrote. To myself, it's true. I one of my favorite things is actually accosting strangers. Welcome everybody to the session. I'm going to go ahead and share over to my slide deck here. Really appreciate everybody coming out. I'll probably stop my video here in a sec so we can just kind of focus on the slides. But yeah, so I'm, as Brian said, I'm with Consensus. I'm the principal architect of this study. A lot of you may be familiar with the study. We published it just a little bit earlier this year. We've actually done a webinar on the study previously, but we have some more data now. We're continuing to kind of work the data and process the data. I'm hoping to surface just a few insights here that are not even included in the study that you can download currently, and we hope to incorporate them in the future when I have time to put them in. So with that said, why don't we just jump right into it? So I am going to kill my video because nobody wants to see that. And all right, here we go. So this is just a quick map of the regions that participated in the study. We had a lot of participants from North America, from the U.S. in particular, but quite a lot of participation from Europe as well, and a significant amount from other regions of the world. So we're going to dive into, we had 423 total response, 463 total responses, and we'll get into what those demographics look like in a moment. So as I said, I'm the survey author. I'm the digital marketing manager at Consensus, and I wear a lot of different hats. Had the great opportunity to organize DEMOFEST, so I hope everybody's enjoying it so far. So let's talk about the survey a little bit. These are the regions that contributed, and we had 400. We actually went up a little bit from this, but for initially 454 participants from over 40 countries. Really broad range of participants in this survey, and you're going to. I'll cover some of the regions that gave more and less data in the past, but we're going to be doing this again sort of toward the end of this year. So if you find this data valuable, I would encourage you when you get the email, if you happen to be on one of our lists for this survey or something like that, that when you get the email, just go ahead and share it around. So the more participation we get, the better the data gets. So let's talk about who participated and what those segments look like, so you know sort of who we're talking about. Pre-sales is a broad umbrella, and so it helps to know exactly who we're talking about. So of all of the people that we surveyed, we asked them what sorts of products they sell. The majority were software products, some were hardware and software, and we had some professional services thrown in there as well as hardware. Across all of these segments, the numbers were very, very similar. So I won't differentiate between segments from here on out. The only difference was professional services had a slightly lower median compensation level, but it was not significant enough to really separate them out from all the rest of the data. So as far as segments, in this study, we studied compensation and workload, and we pulled both practitioners and leaders. And now this is the separation that figures most heavily into compensation, obviously, so we will segment this out for compensation. But there are also discrepancies, as I note on the side here, in how these two different types of role perceive workload for the pre-sales role. And just for your information, when we say leader, we classified leader as anybody manager level or above. So let's just dive right into the meat of the compensation. This is kind of the burning question that I think many people are having. So let's look at median practitioner compensation by region. Now we're going to focus mostly on median in this presentation. For those of you who are statisticians or hobbyist statisticians, you'll recognize that median is more resistant to outliers. So if we have some kind of funky response that's way up on one end or way down on the other end of the spectrum, the median isn't as susceptible to getting skewed by that as, say, the mean is. And the median, just for definition purposes, means of all the, if I look at all of the responses that I got, I'm going to look at the middle response, not the middle value response, but if I have say let's say for practical purposes I have 51 responses, then the 25th response, the response right in the middle of the values is my median, as opposed to the mean, which is what most people think of as the average. So jumping into it, so we have by region, you can see what the median income is for a pre-sales practitioner. Obviously, there are a lot of variables that go into this, but just for broad strokes, we're going to start broad and go narrow. For broad strokes, you can see kind of where we have higher and lower median incomes. It tends to, obviously, as you would expect it to, it tends to correlate very often with the strength of the currency in a given region, which is one area that I didn't measure in this, that I think I might in the next survey, which is just segmenting by strength of currency in the country of residence. But you can see, as you would expect, the correlation there. For practitioners, let's start with North America. Now we had we had most of our responses came from North America and Europe. I do have some data for other regions such as South America and APAC and Australia, and which I think is considered part of APAC, but or is that Oceania? So I have some data for those, but not enough to be statistically significant in some cases. So I'm going to focus mostly on North America and Europe in the data that I share here. So for North America, median practitioner OTE. OTE stands for on-target earnings, which means if we lump together both their base and their at-risk or commission, if we lump that both together and say they hit their targets, then that would be their on-target earnings, right? So we have your base plus your commission if you hit your target. Is on-target earnings. So you can see the distribution here. The mean, I'm citing both the mean and the median here. The mean is 180 and the median is 166. Over here on the right, what I've done, which I didn't do in the initial survey, is I've tried to segment it out as much as possible by years of experience in your current role. So the question that was associated with that was, how many years of experience do you have in your current role? And so over on the right, you can see how this kind of distributes out. If it's grayed out, if the number over here on the right is gray, it means that I don't have enough responses in that bracket to make the results statistically significant. You'll also notice that I had to bucket things not entirely equally in order to get the statistically significant data for that particular bucket. So for instance, 1 to 4 years of experience, you can see that the median OTE income for a practitioner in North America is 137,250. And you can see the similar numbers rising, of course, as we would expect it to, as years of experience in the current role increase. From 137 up to 170 up to 205. And I didn't have enough data below 1 year or over 17 years to give statistically significant data, but I'm sharing what I actually, what the responses said, even though you should take these with a grain of salt, because without a large enough sample size, you can't rely on it as well. But these ones that are not grayed out, I'm pretty confident that I could construct a confidence interval from these and so on for those of you, again, who are data science geeks. So let's jump to Europe. This is the same graph for Europe. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have enough data on the median OTE by experience, by years of experience, to get, I'd have to bucket it kind of all together because I only had 44 responses total. You need at least 30 in a given bucket to make it statistically significant. So, I'm sharing with these with you just for your information, so you can see what my data returned back. You can still see a climb and so on, but I'm trying to keep my methodology, consistent and reliable here. So, but down here, these are reliable. These initial statistics on the main page here. So median income 125,000. The mean income is about 119,417, and we have a minimum and maximum in Europe of 12,2 up to 220,000. Now this is by European region. So once again, this minimum of 12,2, I think we can expect that to be an outlier, probably because it might be in a non-euro zone, for instance, where they're not using the euro or something like that, which tends to skew these numbers. Also, by the way, I asked for these figures in the survey specifically in US dollars. So in order to keep it consistent without needing to do conversions and so on based on what a currency might be doing at any given time. So moving on, you can see the distribution here. For anybody who's not familiar with a histogram, you can ask me in the Q&A afterwards if you like. Essentially, this distribution just says if you look at the dollar values of compensation down here at the bottom, you can see how many responses fell into a given region of compensation. So 6 responses said that they were between 150 and 160, for instance. Each of these numbers represents the lower end of the bound. Upper end of the bound. So this one is 140 to 150 would be 6 responses here. Okay, so that's just a little bit about how histograms work. So let's talk about leader compensation by region. So here's the same graph that we saw for practitioners done up for leadership. Once again, we see similar distributions and similar spikes across regions with generally stronger currencies. And we're going to dive into what each of those regions does in a moment. That is focusing it again on Europe and North America. I would love to do the same analysis on all of these other regions, but I need more participation. So next time we do the survey, as I say, just share it with everybody that is in your region, and we'll get some much stronger data. All right, so in North America, let's look at median OTE by experience, and also, so this, once again, OTE is on target earnings for leaders, manager level and above in North America. So our median is 215,000, our mean is 226, so fairly close between those two, even with some outliers that we have, you know, on the low end and on the high end, even in North America. And what you'll see is similar climbs by experience. So I needed to bucket from 5 to 12 years of experience to get a reliable median for that bracket, and then over 12 years of experience, the median jumps up to 227.5. And I didn't have quite enough to give a reliable number at 1 to 4 years, but you can see what my data spat out there anyway. All right, so, and obviously if you have any questions here, just pipe them into the Q&A and I'll try and get to them at the end. Just actually, I just glanced over to the chat, and there's one which is asking for OT what the split is as far as base commission goes. Now I do have data on base and commission. However, where I initially just kind of gave a general idea, in order to see what that split actually is, technically you have to do a paired sample analysis that is beyond the scope of this particular report. However, if you download the report itself, you'll be able to see at least what the average base is. And then you can compare that to the average on target earnings if you like, and you can start to kind of get a picture there. But I once again, even though it may be nerdy and I'm not trying to obstruct insight here, quite the opposite, but in order to actually get meaningful data, you have to do a fairly sophisticated analysis on the distribution between base and compensation. So let's see. So we're in North America. Let's look at Europe here. Once again, it didn't have quite enough participation to get meaningful statistics out of by segmenting by role. I needed more participation for that, and but I can give you reliable data for the median and the mean, and then you can also check out our minimum and maximum and how many responses we had and so on. So once again, mean was 194 and median was 173, slightly lower than the mean. Once again, that's OTE. So if you're hitting your quota, what would you make total? All right, so as far as compensation goes, those are the broad strokes for North America and Europe. Once again, you can see more insights if you download the full report, and it's available on our website. It's free. You just sign up and it'll email it to you. Just fill out the form and it'll email it straight to your inbox. All right, so let's talk about workload. Now this is where things start to get pretty interesting and unexpected in some areas. So let's we asked a lot of questions about workload. Everything from how long it takes for a customer to get a demo to how many wasted demos are there. As you can see, a ratio of AEs to SEs is one key metric that we like to track. So let's dive into some of these. Ratio of account executives to SEs, and we just kind of defined account executives as the sales team which the pre-sales team supports, right? And we calculated this. We had two different questions that contributed to this. We asked practitioners how many sales reps or AEs they personally support. And so that gave us one measure. And then for leaders, we asked them how big their sales team was. And then we asked them how big the pre-sales team was that supported that sales team. And so we were able to draw our ratios that way. Just if anybody's curious about exactly, how we're asking these questions. So quite a few responses on this one. Minimum was a 1-to-1. Wouldn't you love to work there? And a maximum was more than 15. And it's amazing. I realized that I didn't construct my buckets quite well when I asked this question, because there's a lot of people who are dealing with a 15-to-1 plus ratio of sales to pre-sales. And and we'll talk about some of the ways that people are dealing with it when they find themselves down at this end of the spectrum as well. In fact, obviously, a lot of the DEMOFEST content that we've got is specifically geared toward helping people who find their teams climbing in this direction. Because this seems to be the trend, is going in this direction as opposed to going back towards the lower end of this spectrum. The trend is supporting more and more AEs as opposed to less and less AEs. Okay. Let's see. So now what's interesting about this is that pre-sales leaders gave different numbers to pre-sales practitioners in this ratio. So leaders reported a ratio of about 3-to-1 on average, and practitioners reported a ratio of around 5-to-1. And what that tells me, what that suggests to me rather, is that there's a disconnect between the workload as perceived by practitioners and the workload as perceived by leadership in some cases. The median comes out to 4-to-1, which is just smack dab between those two. All right, so let's talk about initial SE training. Now here's the question that we asked for this. We asked, on average, how many months does it take to train a sales engineer on your team to the point where they can demo on their own? Now, this, once again, this was our first time running this study. We expect to refine it over time. The word demo means different things to different people, and it's worth mentioning that. Some people consider demo a POC, some people consider a demo, for instance, a vision building demo or something of that nature. So it means different things to different people. However, and also it's worth noting that an SE may be is often required to be able to demo multiple products. And some people specified in their response, I'm talking about demoing one product here, right? And the response was around 4 months, which makes sense considering that different people consider different things to be a demo. If you have more questions on what we mean by demo and what different people mean by demo, specifically within pre-sales, we actually have a whole webinar on that you can find on the website called the 6 demo types. And yes, there are 6. Actually, there's I think there's even a 7th one in there, thrown in as a bonus demo. Now, very often people don't realize they're doing different kinds of demos, but they have actually vastly different approaches, and so it's worth checking that out if you if you get a chance. So so the median is 4 months on our report. We hear Peter Cohen, he talks about speaking to many people who indicate that that in order to get to mint a fully capable pre-sales rep who has industry fluency and who is kind of autonomous and has the expertise and the capability to maintain credibility with a client in a deep conversation about their business, it can take like 18 months to 2 years to mint a pre-sales rep who has that level of expertise. But just to get a pre-sales rep to the point where they can demo single product on their own, we're looking at an average, a median of around 4 months. And that presents some problems when we're trying to scale an organization, right? When we're trying to scale a pre-sales organization, because we have this lag time. Now, if you were to compare that to what it takes to train a sales rep. So let's say your organization is scaling the sales organization, right? The AE side of things, and they're looking at what it would take to scale commensurately in pre-sales. Well, it takes longer to mint a pre-sales rep, the expertise required and so on. They're very highly trained, so it takes longer to mint a pre-sales rep than it does a sales rep, generally speaking, which means that you actually, while pre-sales is often left as an afterthought, right? We're going to scale sales. Oh, I guess we better scale pre-sales too. If you want to actually keep pace, you need to start that scaling process before you scale sales. And so that's one of those disconnects that we find with a lot of our clients, actually, with a lot of our customers. We work with a lot of enterprise pre-sales teams. And sometimes they'll be scaling, they'll go through this blitz of scaling sales, and they won't actually devote any resource to scaling pre-sales at all, which is obviously untenable in the long term. So time required per demo. I might need to pick it up here just to make sure that we get to everything. So the median is 2.5 hours per demo. Now, once again, demos mean different things to different people. Check out the webinar if you have questions about that. But the question was specifically, approximately how many hours do you spend on a product demonstration? Please include preparation time and standard follow-up, as well as time spent during the demonstration itself. So what's the time commitment that a single demo booking will put on you, for that day, et cetera, or beyond that day if you have prep time that extends outside of the day you're doing the demo. Median is 2.5 hours per demo. There's a significant portion, approaching 10%, that are at 11 hours per more. A very small percentage, presumably in commercial sales and transactional sales environments where the demo is less than an hour. But 2.5 hours is the median. It's kind of right skewed, this distribution, but you can see, you can look at kind of where you might fall on the spectrum. All right, and once again, what this contributes to the time crunch and the resource crunch that we often see in pre-sales, where not only are SEs doing multiple demos a day, often in many cases, and working 60-hour weeks, but customers in addition are forced to wait longer and longer to get a demo, and we're going to jump into that here presently. Let's talk about how many demos a pre-sales rep will do in a week. The median is 3. The question that we asked specifically, by the way, was on average, how many product demonstrations do you perform in a week? And these were the responses. So median is about 3 a week. It's kind of on the right side of this distribution. We've got a bucket of 3 to 4. So it's kind of on the left side of this column, if you will. And with a significant portion, almost 15%, really close on to 15%, doing more than 6 demos a week. And just bear in mind, what portion of our distribution in our previous slide was doing 1 or 2 hour demos versus how many of our what portion of our distribution is over 2 hours. More than 50% or over 2 hours, with the 50% mark being at 2.5. So that contributes to the time and resource crunch as well. Let's talk about demo delays and business days. So the question specifically here, on average for your product, how many business days does a prospect wait from the time they request a product demonstration to the time they get one? Over 60% of respondents indicated that prospects must wait at least a week. Whew. And over 20%, 1 in 5, have prospects waiting at least 2 weeks for a demo. Now, the latest data that I've seen, feel free to guess if you like. You can drop a guess into the chat. I don't have a poll set up for this, but you can just drop it in the chat if you like. Feel free to guess. Which way would you say that this is trending? Is this are these specifically? Let's talk about sales cycles. Actually, sales cycles, are they growing or are they shrinking? What do you guys think? Feel free to drop it in the chat, and if you okay, so I see some people saying trending longer, some people say they're trending towards shrinking. Very interesting. The way the perceptions go. So the last data that I saw, and I think Don Carmichael actually in his session is talking about some of this at DEMOFEST. So the last data I saw said that they are actually shrinking overall. Overall in the B2B space, cycles are shrinking, and that customers are demanding a path through the education process and a path to value more quickly than they have in the past. Now, if you look at the B2C space, you can see that in spades, right? I mean, everything is faster, everything is on demand, but it's growing. That trend is extending into the B2B space as well. Now, obviously, there are multiple variables in that, right? A $2 million product, a $2 million purchase is going to take longer than a $100,000 purchase, all things being equal. But the trend is that overall things seem to be shrinking from what I've seen, the latest data that I've seen. And I can't quote chapter and verse on that, but I'll see if I can get that into the study for a later date. So as that happens, this delay in waiting for a demo is becoming less and less palatable to our customers, and so this is where it becomes key to understand what they want and when they want it, and finding ways to deliver just what they need without going overboard at the time that they need it. It's the foundational premise that on which our company was founded, but that is the foundational pain point upon which our company was founded. Because I talk to, especially as AE to SE ratios increase, you're going to find that obviously we're extending sales engineers more and more, the more AEs they have to support. Another factor that contributes to this, once again, if you've got questions going into the chat, if you want to pipe them into the Q&A, it'll make it easier for us to just have them all in one place when we go to our Q&A session. So for another factor that contributes immensely to the resource crunch facing sales engineering is underqualified demos. So the specific question, what percentage of your product demonstrations would you classify as unqualified or underqualified? Peter Cohen asks a question frequently. He says, what percentage of your demos would you say are wasted? In other words, they're doomed before they start in some way, either because of the wrong person or they don't have budget, or they're essentially we didn't do a significant enough discovery. And the median is 30%. 50% of our respondents said it was more than 30%. 50% were under. But the median is almost 1 in 3. That's a third of that time dedicated to demos that is essentially just gone with the wind, right? It's not going to contribute to revenue. It's not going to. Now you can argue that no demo is wasted. You're building mind share, et cetera. But when it comes to allocating pre-sales resources, you're not marketing, right? And the value of these highly trained resources is at a premium, is at a serious premium. So 30% is a big hit. Is a big hit to most organizations. And you can see what the distribution looks like here. The majority of respondents report that 30% or more are un or underqualified. For 1 in 5 pre-sales teams, more than half are underqualified. More than half said, that is 1 in 5 of our respondents said that more than half of their demos are wasted, they shouldn't have been done. So that's a massive hit to our productivity. So median is 30%. We recommend, this is one of the things that's come out of this as we've as we've really studied this issue and as we've worked with our customers to find out where the big drags are in their ability to scale pre-sales functionality and their ability to extend and better serve the sales organization in their role and better serve customers. And one of the principles we've settled on is something called a demo qualified lead, a DQL. So in the process of acronym hell here, we have many of you may be familiar in marketing speak with what an INQ is. This is somebody who has downloaded just a piece of your content. An MQL has taken action that makes marketing think that sales may be able to set an appointment with them or get a conversation started. An SAL means sales, or an SAL or SQL means that sales agrees that this is somebody that they can start a conversation with. We have a sales qualified opportunity. That means that sales has met with them and sales says, yes, this is a real opportunity. And then you have, most people move on to very often sales will pitch this over the wall to pre-sales and say, hey, this is a real guy. Would you just give him a demo, right? He just needs to see the product. He needs to see, how it's doing, and they'll go straight for this technical demo or even a POC in some instances. We recommend inserting a separate level of qualification here called a demo qualified lead. And what you want to do is you want to look at buyer behavior ideally. And this is where tooling comes in, because you need to be able to track buyer behavior, right? You need to be able to put yes or no answers on certain buyer behavior. And when they take certain behavior that is representative of a qualified demo, then you can move them to the DQL stage, where they have now taken the action that says to you, yes, we can expend pre-sales resources on this lead. Now let's talk about demo. I'm running up against time here, so we have let's talk about demos required per closed won deal. The question was specifically on average and in your own personal experience, how many pre-sales product demonstrations, either remote or in person, are required per closed won deal? Include all repeat demonstrations required due to new stakeholders engaging, etc. Now the median we got was 3. This is as we share with Peter Cohen and John Kerr and Don Carmichael and all these guys. This really highlights how differently people think about demos. Some people are going to be referring to a POC with this. Some people are going to be like, no, this is nowhere. Of course, this isn't a POC. This is something wholly different. This is, an overview or a vision building demo or something like that. So really worth, we're going to want to make sure that we, in the next survey, that we really kind of segment this out. But once again, check out that webinar if you want to dive more into that. And I really wanted to hit this quickly. So pre-sales KPIs. We asked in a general text field for participants to list the KPIs that they use and that are used to measure either their performance or their team's performance. And then we took all of those out and we parsed them out so that we could show the volume of responses that included a given KPI. So for instance, between 75 and 100 responses included a KPI that was either revenue or ARR. Now, some of these we might have even lumped together. For instance, the next one down is closed deal and revenue influence, right? Which is slightly different, but you could conceivably lump that into the same column. Our closing percentage is another one that is very common, and you can kind of go down these to see what the most popular are. You'll see those who are kind of old school pre-sales folks, they'll see some familiar faces in here, like the technical win, which was a KPI that has kind of gone out of fashion now. Some are measured on prep time and new customer logos and peer review and the number of trials that they get and the request response time and so on. What's interesting to me is this number here. Right here in the middle, we had a significant ratio of our respondents that aren't measured on any KPI at all. And it's difficult to improve our performance in in a department like this without some form of measurement. But I think people very often just don't know how to measure such a consultative role, right? The trusted advisor role, where in many cases we're trying to take pre-sales I know some organizations that don't measure, that don't even pay on quota for a pre-sales team, and they're trying to take them out of that milieu and insert them, trying to get them on the other side of the table to increase that trusted advisor status for them. And if you get a chance, highly recommend checking out Adam Freeman's keynote tomorrow morning on non-financial pre-sales KPIs. I expect that to be absolutely dynamite. I'll be moderating that as well. All right, so last question, who's currently automating? Do you currently automate any portion of the demo process? For example, through videos, webinars, etc. And about half of our respondents indicated that they were currently automating some portion of the demo process. So we've recognized the need for automation in this space, and people are trying different things. People are trying video. They're trying to do, mass webinars. They're trying to do different things that racking their brain for anything they can do to kind of scale up and get out of the resource crunch. It's a big concern out there, obviously, if 50% of people are doing it. And with that, I'm going to reach out to Brian, and we'll launch into our Q&A section. We'll get to as many of these as we can in the next 10 minutes or so.
Perfect. Thanks so much, John. Some really valuable information here. So I appreciate you running through this with us, and thanks for everyone joining. As John said, we'll jump into the QA, and there's definitely a lot of questions in here. So we're going to try to get through as many as we can. For those that are not able, John, is there a way for them to connect with you or to reach out with some of the questions that they have?
Certainly. I'm on LinkedIn. You can feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. In as much as I'm in marketing, I tend to spend as much time in other people's LinkedIn accounts as I do in my own, but I'll try and get to all the questions that people field to me in there if possible. Also, if we don't manage to get to your question in this session, I am going to be reviewing the questions. I'll be reviewing them for feedback on what we can do with the next survey. I'll try and answer them directly if I can, and reach out to individuals. DEMOFEST is going to take up my time for the next little bit, but I'll get to those when I can, for sure. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Is a great way to do it.
Perfect. So first question we'll jump into is, how often will we be doing this survey, and how can teams participate in it?
We're planning on doing it annually. So we will usually launch the survey kind of end of the summer, going into the fall. We'll have a participation, kind of a goal that we try to hit, and extend through there. And once we hit that goal, then we publish. So usually publish first part of the year, surveys conducted end part of the year.
Perfect. So that's great. For the demo delay, there's quite a few questions surrounding that specific topic. So I want to jump into that a little bit. Some of the questions are around how the time is taken into account. Is it assuming that this is before discovery starts, or is that also being included in terms of the time that we're measuring for that demo delay?
You know what? That's a great question. Once again, this runs into the different ways that people think about doing a demo. What we may do, and I'm open to suggestions on this as well, because we do a lot of studying of pre-sales, but I love to get the feedback from boots on the ground and from leaders in the field. So what we may do in the future is segment out and specify exactly what kinds of interactions we're talking about when we talk about how long it takes to get a demo. What I'm finding is that in the people that I've spoken to now, as far as the survey data itself, the reason I'm giving you the question here is because all I can tell you is what I asked and what they said. Because this was as granular as we got in speaking about demos on the actual survey. If you have a suggestion on terminology that we could use better, that we could better use in the next survey, I'm really open to that as well. But as far as this goes, I'm afraid I can't give any deeper insight into this particular terminology and what kind of interaction we're talking about than just what the question was that we asked.
Great. I think we got a lot of good feedback about specifics surrounding this demo delay that we can start to take into consideration for the next round. One of the questions that is correlated to this is if we've done any research into the correlation between the AE-SE ratio and demo delays.
You know what? They are actually correlated more to the number of demos. The demo delay is more strongly correlated to the number of demos required per closed won deal than it is to the AE to SE ratio. So, which was a surprising result to me in our results, and obviously, you know, you can look at our response size, and it's not small. It's not 5,000 people, but I did not see a very strong relationship between number of SEs in this particular instance between AE to SE ratio and the delay time in demos. However, I did see a strong correlation between the number of demos required per closed won deal and the demo delays in business days.
Great, that's perfect. So one of the questions is if this survey was conducted prior to the novel coronavirus pandemic and how we think that could impact some of these numbers moving forward.
Oh, wow, that's a big old question. But in general, I would say that we know that obviously everything like shifted overnight to heavily virtual in emphasis, right? And for us, I can tell you that judging by the way our business ticked up as soon as Corona hit, this slide would probably be the most impacted. That people are figuring out the way the steps go is you figure out how to go virtual. And then once you're going virtual and you realize that you don't have to necessarily do on sites like you used to, then the next step is, well, can we develop assets, right? Can we develop assets that serve in these capacities, right? And the capacities that generally tend to serve the best, that where automation becomes most effective, is what we see is in driving the live interactions. So you remember how we talked about the demo qualified lead? What we want to do is we want to use automation to help through the repetitive education processes where people are less tolerant of needing to speak to an individual, to a live person when they're like, for instance, let's say your customer, your prospect wants to see the software. What do they have? What hoops do they have to jump through to see the software? Do you think they have to wait for a demo? No, they don't. There's something called YouTube. And so they get to see the software when they want to. And so what we recommend is manage that, control that, serve that, literally serve them what they want when they want it, because they're gonna get the looks that they want, and so it would behoove us as pre-sales teams and so on to curate that and to be there immediately as much as possible to serve up that education process and to curate that experience. Because if they go to YouTube, you can't control. I mean, they might be looking up a comparison between yours and another. You can't control, any of that messaging, and there's no guarantee that the presenter in that particular instance is going to have any idea what they're talking about as far as the features and benefits of your solution. So coronavirus, long meandering answer to a great question, by the way. Coronavirus is driving, obviously, the digital transformation, and it's going to be driving the in overall, it's driving the lag time to demo down, because you're going to be delivering virtually, and you can do that much more quickly and much more immediately than if you have to travel on site.
Perfect. So final question before we run out of time for this session. And again, please make sure to reach out to John via LinkedIn with additional questions. And some of these are great questions for the Scaling Pre-Sales and Sales Engineering LinkedIn group, where you'll also be able to find the recording to this session. But there was a question about some ideas you've seen for qualifying to pass the DQL stage.
Yes. Okay. So this comes in, and this is a great one to end on, but it's a broad topic. Okay. If you get a chance, go on the Consensus website and get and branch slightly beyond the pre-sales content to our underlying philosophy when it comes to sales. It's called buyer enablement. And here's the premise of it. The premise of it is that the significant selling that goes on to your customer goes on from your customer. Your customer is actually in charge of the most important selling that goes on within their organization. You have a champion who is going to sell within those halls behind closed doors when you're not there. The premise is that what we need to do is empower them and then track what they're doing, if possible, behind those closed doors in some significant fashion. So what we do is we recommend using something like demo automation, and then tracking. You can track how much it is shared and viewed within the organization. You can track alignment. So sharing of your content and conversations within the organization are significant indicators that that your demo is not going to be wasted. Obviously, there are plenty of qualification methods out there, from BANT to MEDIC to all kinds of different things as far as qualifying for budget and that sort of thing. But when we talk about buyer behavior that you want to track things like how many stakeholders are they roping in, right? How many people are they including? Now, as Kevin said this morning in our first keynote, the reward of a great sales demo for pre-sales guy is often, great, can you do it again for this guy? Oh, and can you do it again for this girl? And can you do it again for this executive and for this gatekeeper? And can you and so it kind of multiplies as we gain traction. Our time crunch increases, but we recommend looking at what stakeholders they bring in, how much they have shared your content around their organization, and you need some technology in order to be able to track that. And also, going back to the essential qualifiers that sales should be doing at the beginning, but that often pre-sales has to step in and do, because sometimes sales just doesn't really do it. All right, and I think we're at time, right?
Perfect. Thanks so much, John. I appreciate it. Great presentation. Thanks to all those that were able to attend today. Just as a reminder, for the events coming up next at 11 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. On track 1, we have digital whiteboarding for pre-sales with John Kerr, and in track 2, we have why add video and automation to your pre-sales process. You can find those invitations in your inbox. If for whatever reason you're not able to find them, you can go to demofest2020.com to refine those invitations. Thanks everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you in the next sessions.